Right, while we are talking about the super middleweight division, and the real reason that we got Denzel Bentley on today is to talk about the super middleweight offering that is coming, I think, in September. Saul Canelo Alvarez against Denzel Bentley's favourite fighter, Terence Crawford.
At least you know.
For the undisputed super middleweight titles. Denzel, in all seriousness, obviously as somebody who is a big Terence Crawford fan, as I'm sure many people are who are watching this, how do you see that one playing out?
Oh man, at first I didn't like it. I was like, come on, don't do it. Don't go up there. Don't do it. But as it's got closer, I'm believing in Crawford, man. I mean, I think he can pull it off. We haven't really seen the best of Canelo in years. I think his best days were at 160. When I think of it, that Danny Jacobs fight, that's probably the best performance I've seen Canelo in all these fights. I know he's had so many fights, probably had better performance, but in recent times, just the lateral movement, the elusiveness, the way he lets his shots go, the just effortless kind of movement and flowing of punches. He hasn't been that since then. Since he moved to 168, he's just a powerhouse. He's slow with his feet, throws less punches than we've seen before. He's always looking for a big shot. Hardly sets anything up anymore. It's just his whole style has just changed, and it's worked for him because a lot of fighters go in there with that fear factor, like, oh my days, it's Canelo. Or he will wear you down at some point because he's so physical and strong. Or when he hits you, you kind of don't want to know because he hits so hard. But I don't think Crawford's going to go in with that mindset. I think whatever Canelo brings, he's going to be able to match. He's got better feet. Even though at 154 his feet didn't look the best, but Majimov is a good mover. But he's got better feet. He can fight both ways, and I think he'll use more of his arsenal than what Canelo would use. So I think he would find it easier. So I think Crawford can beat him on points.
You mentioned there about Crawford's fight. We've already talked about this. I've brought him on specifically to grill him about this fight, so you can be an interested observer for this. You mentioned there about 154 pounds. Now, Israel Majimov is a fantastic fighter. In my opinion, despite the obviously the biggest win of Terence Crawford's career came against Errol Spence, I think the best win might be that Israel Majimov win, because it was up in weight against the guy who's still a world-class fighter. But he didn't quite have that same authority, did he, at 154 pounds, Crawford, as he did at 147 pounds. An extra 14 pounds on the legs, an extra 14 pounds on the opponent. It's a lot, isn't it? It's a big jump to gauge. I mean, you're a fully fledged middleweight. Somebody jumping up from welterweight. I think you would fancy yourselves to be too big for a Boots Ennis or somebody like that. There are weight classes for a reason. How important is it for Crawford? You mentioned the movement, but with the additional weight on his legs to essentially keep that speed and not get bogged down, because if his feet weren't necessarily the same at 54, the additional weight could lend itself to being even worse at 168.
It's true, and I think he shouldn't focus too much on trying to build muscle around making 168. He should just, continue training. I don't know how much weight he has to drop if he even walks around at 68 or more. I don't know how much weight he'd have to drop to get to that.
Get quite heavy, he does.
Heavy. But I think he just needs to work on those things with that weight on him in the gym, not just try and practice it. But I think more so than anything, the reason why his feet weren't as good at 54 against Majimov, because it was against Majimov. Yeah. I mean, if you're fighting someone with good feet, then it's just better you don't try to match them with it. So I think with Majimov, the idea was slow feet, fast hands. Because Majimov had quick feet, he'd be in and out and he'd jump in, long arms, gangly arms. He throws from both sides, he can switch. So I think Crawford thought, okay, slow my feet down. When it's time to engage, I'll let my shots go. So I think, Crawford being as smart as he is, that's what he tried to do, rather than him being too heavy to not be able to move. And I think with Canelo, he still won't be able to move as much as he did at 140 pounds or whatever. And I think it'll be more of a physical matchup. But Crawford is stronger. Coming from wrestling background, I'm guessing he likes being in the inside. But he has got to be careful, because Canelo has got real power. I mean, he went up to light heavyweight and knocked out Kovalev. He hit Charlo with a shot and just backed him up for the whole fight. Knocked out Caleb Plant. I mean, he's beating up big guys. He broke Billy Joel's eye socket. So he's got to be careful with that. And I think he's got to be on that movement. Box from a decent distance. But it's a tricky fight, man. It's a tricky fight. I've tried to look at it in so many ways, and I'm just like, I just tried to see it in every way where Crawford wins, but it is a tricky fight.
You mentioned the Jamel Charlo fight, and I think that is the key fight to look at, because you've got somebody in Jamel Charlo who he was a career 54-pounder to that point, good punching power, good boxer, not as good of a boxer as Terence Crawford, but another fighter who was kind of held in those lofty pound-for-pound rankings for all of the work he did at 54 pounds. And it was getting that balance between the movement and being active enough. And Charlo, I was really disappointed. I went all the way over to Vegas, which was great anyway. But just any excuse to go over there. But I felt like he would be the type of guy who would die on his shield, go out on his shield. Go out on his shield, and it never really happened. And you mentioned he got caught with it was like an overhand right and then an uppercut in like the 5th or 6th round, wasn't it? And it looked as though he was going to kind of unravel a little bit, Charlo, but instead he kind of sort of submitted to losing a decision, didn't he, in move. I can't see Crawford doing that because of the kind of the way that he is. I mean, he doesn't seem to be somebody who would settle for second best regardless. But it is that balance, isn't it, between getting the movement right, but also letting your hands go enough against the guy who is a bigger puncher, a bigger guy, and not getting caught.
Yeah, with the Charlo thing as well, I just remembered a few fights. You said earlier his punch output is low, and it's true. I mean, even in the Tony Harrison rematch, he still didn't pick up the pace. It was just Harrison just being silly and showboating, and he just ended up getting caught. And then he finished him. Charlo's a good finisher, by the way. And then the Jackson fight, when he won his world title, it was like he was losing the fight and he wasn't picking up the pace. And then he just found a shot. He couldn't do that with Canelo. So it was like, he came out and said, at least I didn't get knocked out. And I'm like, that's a bad mentality.
The first thing he said when he came into the press conference, a big smile on his face. I was like, Jesus Christ.
It's crazy. Man. It's crazy. I think Crawford would probably get knocked out trying to knock Canelo out. And I think that makes for a better fight. And it just shows, his spirit and him as a fighter. But I think in this fight, he has to opt to box. I don't think he should try and get in close with Canelo and do anything. He should just box. Because even at first, Crawford didn't fancy it himself. He was going around saying the weight class is for a reason. I'm not going to 68. And maybe Shakur Stevenson got in his ear because Shakur Stevenson keeps saying it like, I think he beats Canelo, and probably convinced him to go.
Probably heard how much money he was getting and said, the weight's not too bad actually. I'm a big guy. He's strong. You see him just deadlift 400 pounds in jeans, so he is a big strong guy. It's just a massive jump. I mean, we'll bring in Andy Clark now, who is Team Crawford for the fight as well. Andy, you've been talking about Terence Crawford. It would be an upset. There's no way it wouldn't be an upset. The guy jumps essentially 3 weight classes. Okay, he had a pit stop at 54 pounds, but goes up to 168 pounds and slays the king of the super middleweight division. But you're all for it, aren't you, Andy? This has been one that you've had your eye on from a while out.
Yeah, and unusually for me, because it's the kind of fight that typically I wouldn't like, because I don't like to see people lose just because they step up too far in weight. And one of the things I always admired about Mayweather was that he wouldn't do it. People were talking about, he should fight Golovkin, and he's just like, come on, be serious.
If he'd have beat him, it would be like, he needs to fight Andre Ward.
I don't have it. Yeah, exactly. And I'm not a fan of it. I don't think it doesn't mean anything. But with this, I do think he can do it. I'm not saying he definitely will do it, but I do think he can do it. The way it's being talked about is interesting, because there is an increasing kind of groundswell within the trade from fighters, basically. And you mentioned Shakur, but he's not the only one of people saying, and trainers too, of saying that he has the tools, that he can do this. It may be that by the time we get to the fight, within boxing, people are viewing it as being fairly even. But let's not fool ourselves. If he does it, it'll be an absolutely massive achievement, because I do agree with everything he said, basically. And with Canelo, I feel like you know what's coming now, and you can see it coming too, more importantly. He doesn't have that acceleration or ability to take the needle from 0 to 100, then down to 40, then 70, then 0, then 100 again. He doesn't have those gears anymore, and we talk about that quite a bit, is how fighters lose that as they get older. But what he does do is still very, very effective, and he's put away some really good people, either bust them up or put them into their shell like he did with Charlo. So it could be on the night that actually it turns out Crawford can't deal with that Canelo is too big. But I just think that he does have a real chance. And you used an interesting word when you said, no, submission. He will not submit. And like you said, he would rather get chinned trying to win than get halfway through and think, you know what, let's just go the distance. The mentality is different. And that is, for me, that is the main reason why he can do it. Because he will go in there believing that he can do it, and utterly determined that up until you know, up until he's got to the point of just being stretched out on his back, he will continue to try and make it happen.
I think for me, one of the concerns for Canelo is the fact that he's seemingly boxed within his comfort zone since that Bivol fight. I don't think he's come close. I think the fight he came closest to losing, ironically, was William Skull, by virtue of neither of them doing anything.
Yeah.
But outside of that, I mean, then these are not, you know, bad names that he has beaten. I'll make the case for Canelo and tell you why you're wrong. This is Gennady Golovkin, obviously that version of Gennady Golovkin up at super middleweight. John Ryder, again, you know, with respect to John, not world beater, but legitimate top 10 super middleweight at the time. Jamal Charlo, obviously smaller. Jaime Munguia, Edgar Berlanga. These are unbeaten guys in Berlanga and Munguia. Obviously William Skull as well. And it seemed as though he was similar to the Charlo fight. He was able to hit them early. They knew where they were. They knew what time it was, and it was going to be like, okay, well, if you're just going to fuck around and run around the ring, I'll just win. I'll get my 30, 40 million and we go home. And that's it. And that's what he did. Yeah. And being in there with a guy who's not going to do that, you wouldn't have thought, at least. You would think that Crawford is going to, give him, you know, a lot to think about from a technical perspective, but that dog in him is just not going to allow that anyway. Can he then go again? Can he raise the level of his performance? If it's all very well and good hitting somebody, putting him in a box, and then just sort of going through the motions. If you hit him and he doesn't go in the box, what are you going to do? Are you going to hit him again? That's a big concern. If you're in the Canelo Alvarez camp, we spoke about this a couple of weeks ago after the Canelo fight, Andy. One thing that I do think will get his fires going is if he loses to Terence Crawford. It goes both ways. As big, and it is a massive win for Terence Crawford. If he's able to go up and beat Canelo Alvarez, it's a massive win, but it's also a terrible loss for Canelo Alvarez. Oh, yeah. A terrible loss. This guy's a welterweight. You know, an unbelievable, you know, all-time great welterweight, he may be, but a welterweight nonetheless. You're a super middleweight, the undisputed super middleweight champion. Yeah. Not really come close to losing a fight at super middleweight.
No, there will be no complacency from him, because even if there was a danger of that will make sure there isn't, because he'll know how damaging it'll be to lose. No matter how good Crawford is, because of that's all people will talk about is the weight gap between the pair of them. I wonder what it'll be like for Canelo as well, having a build-up where he's going to have to share some space with somebody who every chance he gets will just be giving him that kind of like evil side eye, because Crawford's a nasty guy.
Yeah,
when it comes to his profession, he's a nasty guy, and all the best people are. And Canelo's like, you know, he's the king, isn't he? And generally speaking, when people box him, they are grateful for the opportunity because they're going to make a shit ton of money. Crawford doesn't. I'm not saying he doesn't care about that. Everyone cares, but it's not about that.
Yeah.
He's there to take his scalp. He's there to turn him over, to ruin his legacy. And he'll absolutely believe he can do it. And I wonder whether things could get a bit spicy in the build-up. But that could be a good thing for Canelo, because he hasn't had that for a while, has he?
Well, not with his opponent. I mean, he had it with Oscar De La Hoya before he boxed Jaime Munguia. That was fantastic, by the way. But anyway, I really liked the face-off that they did, because the face-off that they did, they both started smiling when they was doing it. Yeah. And then you can just see the moment where they both look, actually, I'm going to... You can just do that. Oh, yeah, let's get together.
Yeah.
Like, both of them. Like, it was great. And that is, you have got two studs here. The problem for you two is that you've got one stud in a significantly higher weight class, and weight classes do matter. I do think that it is too much. I think it is. I'm Andy Clark. I'm the boring one in this.
You could
situation.
You could well be right, and it may well be one of those fights where that's what happens on the night, and what does happen after the event appears incredibly obvious, and we'll all feel a bit foolish. But I just feel he is that guy, Crawford. Like, just mentality-wise and ability-wise, he's got a chance. He has got a chance.
He's got a chance, yeah, for sure. And I think the longer the fight has got, not that it's been talked about for years and years and years, but I think when you look at the period of time building up to it, on the Canelo side of things, you can see why people would be giving Crawford potentially a stronger chance than they would have a couple of years ago. But also, Crawford's not been the most active, which I think is not the ideal footing for him to go into a fight like that.
But I think the advantage to that is it would allow him to fill out into that 168 weight as long as he's still training.
I'm sure he is. I mean, he's that type of guy. He's very much that Bernard Hopkins level of kind of like, he looks after himself completely. It'd be interesting to see what he weighs, though. You mentioned it earlier on about, like, you know, if he comes in at 164, 165 and he's fast and he's still got his legs, you know, that might be the way to go. Yeah. It doesn't necessarily need to be 168. It'd be interesting to see what Canelo does as well against somebody who's a little bit more fleet-footed, but also has a little bit more of an offensive threat than some of the other guys that he's fought, some of the smaller guys who have moved up. Canelo might, I mean, I don't see Canelo coming in 165, but he might prioritise speed in camp, whereas he hasn't against these other guys that he's boxed in recent years. He hasn't boxed anyone who can move, really, outside, I mean, William Skull ran away, it's not the same thing. But, like, I mean, Berlanga, Munguia, they're flat-footed guys who come forward and throw punches. You know, it's not going to be that from Terence Crawford. I do also wonder what stance we'll see Crawford in. I think he's exclusively southpaw for that fight.
Yeah, I think so too.
I think he's southpaw and he's on his bicycle.
Yeah, I think he comes out southpaw. It's a different look. It's something that Canelo hasn't had since Billy Joe.
Yeah.
So I think he will come out southpaw. And the last time, obviously he's lost 2 fights, but the last southpaw he fought before Billy Joe was Lara. Lara gave him problems.
I thought Lara won that fight.
Yeah. Me watching that back then, I thought he might have got it, but I think you come out southpaw, and I think Crawford moves better when he's a southpaw as well. When he's orthodox, he tends to have a bit more of a fight. When he's a southpaw, he can kind of like get that kind of distance on the outside and kind of move a little bit better. So I think he could be exclusively southpaw still.
Be interesting to see what Crawford does for sparring. Get Majumov in. Good sparring. Majumov was Dimitri Bivol's head sparring partner, lead sparring partner from when Bivol boxed Canelo.
That's a good shot.
Yeah.
There's a few interesting things around it as well, isn't there? I mean, I think, you know, these days people get very obsessed about who's promoting things and stuff like that and where it's going to be. And that is a big talking point around this, because generally speaking, my advice on that score is just never mind that. We're going to get the fight. It doesn't really matter. But at the same time, I am curious to see where this ends up being, because when it was going to be TKO and Dana White, and they're talking about the stadium in Las Vegas and stuff like that, there's no way you could see that being outside the USA. But now it's not them. I wonder whether it'll actually end up being in Saudi Arabia. I know they're saying it won't be, but I just wonder whether it might be, and whether that makes any kind of difference. Canelo's boxed there once before.
Canelo came out recently
Crawford
and said
hasn't.
He said that the fight was agreed for Las Vegas, so the fight will be in Las Vegas. He said that recently, which obviously is kind of put the cat amongst the pigeons a little bit, because I think Turkey's come out and said, or the Ring have come out and said that there's 5 potential cities: New York, LA, Vegas, Riyadh. No, we'll talk about that one. But yeah, I mean, it is interesting. If for no other reason than we want to get a jump on hotels and flights and stuff, because we want to go over there for that one. Although if Crawford wins, I'll have to block Denzel Bennett's phone number, which is not what we're looking forward to.